Hey, what's up, everybody? I just had an awesome conversation with Julie Blackman, the owner of Farmers and Artisans right there in Snyder, New York. A lot of you probably already know it, but she's also the owner, sixth-generation farmer of Blackman Farms up in Niagara County. And we just had such an amazing conversation. We talked about how she pivoted out of physical therapy into the career she has now. We talked, what does it really mean to be locally sourced? What does it really mean to be farm to table? And we talked about the business, supporting local farmers. We talked about agriculture in Western New York, and we just had a really great conversation. She's easy to talk to, and it was really, really insightful. So check it out, whether you know her or not. I think you'll become a fan pretty quickly. Look, as always, you know where I'm going. This episode is brought to you by my law firm, Richmond Volna Personal Injury Attorneys. We hope you never need us, but if you do, we're here for you. And look, we want to keep these things going, keep having these great conversations. Please do us a favor. Wherever you're listening, like, subscribe, follow us on social media. Helps us keep having these great conversations and attract more and more great people. So enjoy the episode. Should we talk about stuff? We probably should, right?
Favors, babies, cookies.
I have to start it off a certain way, and Brett probably knows where I'm going with this. So you have, in my opinion, and I'm sure you won't be upset by this, the best breakfast sandwiches in Western New York.
Well, thank you.
Which you cannot get on Sunday mornings.
I know.
You're killing us. What's going on?
Well, we were open 7 days a week before COVID.
Yeah.
And then, we had to kind of streamline back, during that time. And then we just never went back to opening on Sundays again, mainly because of staffing. Like I'd have to add a whole another baker and a chef and people up front. So it's just sort of a decision that we had to make. Unfortunately, but yes, it makes it very popular on Saturday mornings.
Oh yeah, for sure. I was just messing with you. Like Brett and I, he's like, we're like, we always talk like, what are some fun things we can talk to Julie about or whatever. And I was like, I'm gonna ask her because we always joke with each other. Like you drive by on a Sunday morning, you're like, ugh.
I know, closed. I know, fair question.
We're only
mainly it's
2 minutes down the street from you. It's really hard to resist.
Yeah.
A
I
Sunday
know, and
morning sandwich.
a Sunday morning walk and family time. It would be a nice opportunity too, but it just sort of beyond our abilities right now.
Oh, I get it. So, of course, I'm going to talk to you a lot about Farmers and Artisans.
Mm-hmm.
It's a place that it's not just a staple in Snyder. I mean, everyone seems to know about it and love it. But there's a lot to this story, as I learned as I was getting ready for this. And I guess I got to take you way, way back. Blackman Farms is a sixth-generation farm up on the escarpment. What was it like growing up on a farm? I would love to hear your perspective.
Well, I was the oldest of four that growing up there, and my grandparents lived across the road from us. My aunt and uncle and cousins lived on farm property a little bit up the road from us. So yeah, it was a unique life, I guess, but it's rural up there. And so a lot of my friends and things like that grew up on farms as well. So when you're just born into it, you don't know any different, but it was a lot of hard work. It was a lot of family time. It was fun. I mean, it was kind of a huge playground for us as kids. We were, had a lot of fun and resourceful, and we played in the woods all the time and up in the barn. And I had great cousins who would come over all the time. So, it was a great life. But my father, it was a dairy farm when we were growing up. So he milked every morning and every night. So your days and holidays and everything evolved around, my dad's milking schedule. So it was a different time, time of life to grow up like that. But it's, made us all who we are.
I think the farm goes back to, what is it, 1852?
1852, yes.
Wow, that's wild.
Yeah, great-great-great-grandfather. So, yeah.
I mean, I'm sure everywhere you look on that farm, there's reminders of the history and of the past.
Yes, and my father loves history as well, and so there's a lot of things that are preserved. The barns are original, and things have been built on and added on, and every generation has done their upgrades and things like that. But he actually found the original water source up, because when you think back when they were settling, you had to have water. So that was one of the main things you had to find. And up in the escarpment is a lot of natural springs. So he found the original receiver box that generations before they found and piped the water down to the barns and to the house and things like that. So when you go back in time, they didn't have digital things to do that or ways to find it. So, but they, found it up in the escarpment in the Springs.
I think about this all the time. My dad is a masonry contractor, small business, takes a lot of pride in like quality and how they treat people. But I remember as a kid growing up and even now, right? And you look around Buffalo and you'll always point out like, you'll hear that saying, like they don't make them like they used to, or they don't build houses like this, or I mean, obviously, if you go to Europe, I mean, you're seeing the way things were crafted hundreds of years ago, and you're like, no one would spend the money to do that. Is there anything like that, like with the farm, where it's like, wow, the way this is constructed or the way this is put together, this system or this process or whatever it is, it's actually the best way of doing things. It might be the hard way, but like you're not going to see people do it in this day and age?
Yeah, our barn, when you look at the oldest section of our barn, was hand-hewn beams and pegs.
Yeah.
And they're beautiful.
Yeah.
And we've added on and put up, newer barns and things like that. And they don't have the beauty of them, like churches and other, like your building here is beautiful. Like they just don't make them like they used to. So, machinery now is so technology-based. I remember asking my grandfather, because he plowed fields with a team of horses during his earlier years. And I asked him, what was the best invention or what was the greatest invention that you think changed things for you? And he said, it was interesting. I wondered where he was going to go with it. And he said hydraulics. And because that changed the way that had the horsepower, through hydraulics. So it was an interesting thing for him, from the person who, when you think of his life, went from plowing with a team of horses to, saw some big tractors around at the end of his lifetime too.
That is crazy. Is there anything, if I were to ask you that question that you asked your grandfather, how would you answer that?
Probably, computers and phones, technology. Even my dad is fairly savvy on his phone and checking weather apps. Like we think, we talk about that a lot.
Point. Yeah.
Like how their gut feeling of what storms were coming. And now I literally, my dad does it fairly well now too, but could look at Doppler radar, which I'm obsessed with, and can say like, better get things under cover, or don't cut hay, or, there's a storm coming across. It's going to be here in, a half an hour. So when you think of all that, but they didn't have those warnings back then at all.
That's a great point. That's a great answer. That makes a lot of sense. When you were growing up on the farm, were you thinking in your head like, hey, I'm going to come, I want to do this like long term? Because what we're going to get into is kind of like your journey, which is really unique. So it sounds like maybe you weren't thinking that. I'm just kind of curious, like where your head was growing up. Because sometimes, it goes one way or the other. Like I've talked to people who have taken over family businesses, and some knew from day one, like this is what I want to do. Some were kind of forced into it, but then the others either never came back to the family business, or it took maybe a little bit longer due to whatever circumstances. I'm just kind of curious, like where your head was growing up and how you think it, like kind of reflect back on that now.
Right. No, I didn't think I would stay. I loved being outside. I, loved helping, being the oldest. I had to help my dad, when my legs got, the joke was when your legs were long enough or my feet could touch the pedals, then I had to start some light tractor work and raking hay and things like that. So, but I loved school too and loved learning. And so I kind of didn't think I would stay there. And I didn't. I actually went to college for math and science, and then went on for a physical therapy degree, transferred here back to UB for physical therapy.
Yeah.
Loved math and science. Still love that. I think back, like I love the hands-on.
Yeah.
I knew I didn't really want a corporate job. Back then it was khakis and shirts and treated people, and love the hands-on and fixing things and making a difference. So some of those same concepts were there, but I just had decided to go on with it. I did that for close to 20 years, but still close by, and still went back because we have a U-Pick apple business. So always helped with that, even, during college or when I could, to come back to that.
Was there any part of it, like not going right into like working on the farm or taking over the family business, for the lack of a better term? Was there anything like I owe it to myself to try something else, or I'm trying to get inside the mind. Everyone has a totally different answer. I'm curious, like, why it maybe sometimes takes some of us longer to realize, oh, maybe this is something that I I want to do long term. I can put my own spin on.
I think I was ready, I was ready to kind of step away from the farm a little bit and, a big family.
Yeah.
And just kind of ready to go off on my own and explore and do things. And my parents were very supportive of that, of all my siblings. Education was important. Music was important. We were all in sports. That was all important. And if, it was a decision to come back. But also back then, like, it was tough. I mean, agriculture to this day is. But it wasn't a money-making thing. The dairy industry was, it was hard to make money in dairy. Fruit, we had just started our U-Pick business, but sort of the agritourism wasn't what it is today. So it was a difficult time, and I think my parents wanted us to be able to go off and be successful and do whatever we wanted to do. So I never felt that guilt. So me coming back was on my own accord. And I remember when, it's a whole story of kind of when I decided to make that decision, come back, and I, approached my parents on it. And my dad said, like, to do what?
Huh.
And just, it was kind of a surprise, I think, that I had kind of started transitioning.
That I have so much respect for parents who, support their kids and would just want them to be happy, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I mean, like my dad, like I said, owned a business, and if anything, he was trying to push me away from it because he knew how hard it was.
Right.
And he would like bring me to like these terrible job sites and like make sure you continue to do well in school. Like you don't want to do this. And even I've told this story pretty recently. I never told anybody before that, I was in law school. Like I just hated it and hated everything about it. And I was like, yeah, I should just quit and come back and take over your business. He's like, no. He's like, that's not an option. You have to finish. And so it's always great when you see people do that. Cause like whether it's like with sports or with business, family businesses, when kids are forced to do something, it usually doesn't end very well.
It backfires, and like I said, my parents were very supportive of all of us to do our thing and still are.
Yeah. Okay. So you go off into the world of physical therapy.
Right.
And it sounds like you did like it.
I loved it.
Yeah.
I did. I loved it.
So talk to me a little bit about, what you liked about the practice. And then if you could kind of walk us through or into like, what led you to really start thinking, maybe this isn't what I want to do. Maybe I do want to take a harder look at agriculture again.
Well, like I said, I worked out in Medina Hospital for a long time. I started there. That was one of my final rotations during school, and they hired me right afterwards. So I did that for a while. I actually took a traveling physical therapy job and went out to Phoenix and worked at so I have kind of a travel bug in me and wanted to get out there. Did that, came back, went back to the hospital, became director of the rehab program there because we started a comprehensive rehab unit. So I oversaw all PTOT and speech. Then went off into a private practice with a pain management doctor locally in Lockport. Loved that. We had a small practice, but really, had great impact with people. And then I tell this story, but a physical therapist who I worked with, her daughter lived out in San Francisco, and I was friends with the mom who I worked with, but she had introduced me and I became great friends with her daughter. And so they invited me to go on a trip to go visit her out in San Francisco and, travel bug. And I said, yeah, sure. So I went out there, and then while I was there, and this is, I don't know, 18, 19, 20 years ago now, but the whole like farm to table, small batch this, like all the words that we know now, they were ahead of us and already doing it. And I remember going to a winery, and it was pairings with cheeses, and I can picture it. Sat down, and it was just beautiful scenery and wine. And I saw the cheeses they paired, and it was like Cowgirl Creamery. I think they're still around doing. And I saw that and the packaging, and it was so good. And then it just was like, oh my God, this is so cool. This next level of agriculture.
Yep.
So we had done U-Pick and started all that, but this was the next kind of value added, is kind of what it's called, side of agriculture, where you're taking, a base product of milk or fruit and things like that, spinning it to the next level is a value added. And then there's shelf stability, and there's year round, and there's packaging, and there's marketing opportunities. And so that whole trip, I kind of was like, oh, we went to the Farmers Market in San Francisco at the Ferry's Market, I think it's there, and just it's all over the place. And so on the flight home, I remember just kind of like staring out the window and like, oh boy, something just triggered in me.
Yeah.
I got to think about this a little bit. Like, I was the sixth generation. All my other siblings were off. All had moved away at that point doing their careers, and I was the only one, back here in Lockport. And what was the next generation going to do if we're going to kind of save, in quotes, the family farm?
Yep.
And so that's just my personality. Like, once I get something in my head, it just sort of starts spinning. So I actually researched some value-added product lines that we could do with fruit from our farm. And there were grants through USDA and through New York State agricultural markets, and found a grant writer to help me. And so we were awarded a couple of the grants. So then it gave us some cash flow. This is when my dad started saying, like, okay, this is like legit, what we're trying to do here. And that really, starting the value-added product line, which I started a line of fruit butters and apple sauces, all using our apples, pears, and cherries, pumpkins from the farm. So that just started this whole thing, and branding, and then websites were starting up, and it just sort of changed the course into a little bit different avenue for agriculture. But it opened up all these opportunities, because now I could go to farmers markets and sell our products, and then it was exposure there to market back, for the UPIC business, and then it led into meeting all these wonderful farmers and producers that were all trying to start and do the same thing. So I met everybody I started at the winter market on Elmwood Avenue, could, haul our wares down the church steps of the church there. We did it all winter long with a group of farmers and producers. And then that started the thoughts of, maybe I'm getting ahead of the
No, it's great.
thing, but started the thoughts of, okay, we need a year-round brick and mortar. We got to, there's more to sell. It's not just summertime fruits and vegetables. Like, everybody had maple syrup and honey, and there were bakers and preserves like mine were, and, so many neat options coming out. So that's sort of where we transitioned. And it led a lot of people to the farm for UPIC, and that grew. So it just sort of all snowballed. But there was a while I was doing PT and doing this, because I couldn't quite give up my, paycheck yet from physical therapies, and I didn't want to. And I loved what I doing. It was a hard decision to finally kind of end that. I did both for a while, and worked like a maniac, and then things started heading towards the farm and store phase of it, and then I left healthcare.
It's a good thing you have the travel bug, huh?
I do have a travel bug.
It's a good thing you do, because if you don't take that trip, who knows, right?
Right. And I traveled. I was fortunate to travel with my sister, one of my sisters, and family to Europe. And summer times, they would ask me to go and help with the kids and this and that, and that was an inspiration too. I mean, it's just, kind of the community part of it, the quality of it, eating locally, farm to table, all of that. I was fortunate to continue to be inspired by all of that as well, kind of a European feel to it.
So when you talk about value added, can you explain a little bit more about what you mean?
Sure. So value added meaning that you take a base commodity and you process it and turn it into something that has a higher retail value,
Sure. Yep.
has a higher stability, shelf stability. It has a high, more marketability. So cheeses,
Yep.
like I said, my line of preserves of the fruit butters and apple sauces, and the chili sauce that goes on your breakfast sandwich.
Yeah.
That was my grandmother's recipe.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
yeah.
amazing.
So we grew up, small batch, fall batches of that, and then I was like, oh, I think I could make this into bigger batches.
That's
so,
awesome.
Yeah. So, that, like I said, the cheeses, the maple producers are doing, the maple candy, maple mustard, I sell maple popcorn.
Yeah.
So it's all those things that just add value to that base product and allows additional value-added retail, wholesale money associated with it, as well as marketing and shelf stability.
That makes a lot of sense. So you're working, taking you back again a little bit, you're working as a physical therapist, and now, the passion is like full tilt when it comes to agriculture, and you're underway. You've got grants, you're going to farmers markets, you have your products. What was the thing that got you to say, okay, all right, I'm going to leave I'm going to basically shed myself of this safety net with the physical therapy, and I'm going full tilt? Because from what I heard you said, and maybe you got this a little bit when you were working in the private office, but it doesn't sound like, and again, this is like a lot of entrepreneurs, or maybe even most, that you had like a business background. So, or maybe you did, but how did you like get past all that and make the decision like, okay, I'm just going to go for this thing now?
Well, it's funny when I think you're just reminding me. I remember we had our small PT practice, and I was working on developing my fruit butter line and everything. So I'd bring in sample batches and have my patients try them.
That's actually perfect.
Have them try it and give input. And then
Yeah.
I remember I wanted to do one of my fruit butters with cherries. And I was like, wait, what should I blend with it, to do cherries? And I remember, we washed our hands a gazillion times, and there was a bottle of Jergens like cherry almond lotion. And I remember putting the lotion on, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to do cherry and almond.
That's amazing.
It's funny. So and the point is like, you never know. Like you just, but the physical therapist was a good friend of mine who I worked with, and I would have her taste it. And, I think back on that, like they were my taste testers towards things. I know. When did I make the big decision? I think I probably got too busy.
Yeah.
Like I can manage a lot, but I also, like a Windows program, when there's you have too many windows open at the top, and it starts freezing, and you start making mistakes. And I'm sure I kind of self-checked myself and just said, okay, it's time. It was a risk because, it took me, it was a financial decision and risk to take. But I guess, I felt strong enough about it, and I know I'm, a person of strong resolve, and I figure things out, and we'll fix it and work on it, and not fearless, but, you got to just sort of sometimes just take the plunge and jump in.
Yeah, it is crazy how many themes or constant threads we have between different types of people in different industries who we're fortunate enough to have conversations with us here. That is one for sure. Like, you know what? I'm just going to go for it. And I trust myself that, especially if I'm just relying on me, that I can figure it out.
Well, and I use the analogy like jumping into a pool. Like I'm not so much of a risk taker that I would just like, maybe I would sometimes, but for the most part, I wouldn't just run and like jump in. Like I felt like I had gone to the edge, dipped my toes in, came back, dipped my toes in again, check the weather, that type of thing. Like, is this safe? Is the environment safe? This and that. And then you get to a point that you're just like, okay, just jump in for gosh sake. So I have to say I probably approached that way. Like I had done due diligence, and it wasn't an easy decision, but there's a time you just got to do it. And then if not, come back up out of the water and fix it, so.
For sure. That's a great analogy too. So when you tell yourself, okay, I'm going to start the brick and mortar, I know it's evolved a lot, but I'm thinking about being in Farmers and Artisans now. How has it changed since when you first opened to now? Like, are there constant themes? Are there like, I feel like there's got to be so many more. There's so much more to like, whether it's farm to table or locally sourced. Like, there seems to be like it's a lot more hard work to maintain it this way and to keep it true to maybe like the actual mission or the values of the business. Can you talk a little bit about, what the values are, the things that are non-negotiable kind of how it's like kind of transformed through the years?
Sure. Yeah. Well, when I had a business partner when I first started, and David Fetzer, and I met he and his wife Margie at our Bidwell farm, or at the winter market at first, and they had an artisan bakery. And so that's where it was wintertime, and that's where we started kind of this concept of the brick and mortar. And that's where we kind of came up with the name of Farmers and Artisans. So I kind of represented more the farm side, and he represented the artisan side, and was a very talented baker and food people. So I started with him, and when we opened the first store in the old Sweet Jenny's on Main Street there, it was much smaller, and that sort of worked out. But we scrubbed that thing from like the work that went into just getting open, and we were so naive. Like ignorance is bliss is probably
100%.
one of my I would have known, probably was better that I didn't really have a business background,
I say that
because
all the time.
if I sat down and we had a business plan, but if it was any better or worse than what we did, we would have never done it. So ignorance was somewhat bliss in that case. So we started it there, and then we were starting. Oh, and the farmers market was there. That's when breakfast sandwiches started, and that was David's concept, because the Williamsville Farmers Market took place down there by the Red Mill. And we were sort of towards the upper end of it, towards Main Street. And so he had the idea of buying this outdoor grill and setting up out there and starting breakfast sandwiches and get people up our way and then into the store and things like that. So that's where it all started. And I still have the grill in my shed, actually.
Oh, that's cool.
But we would do 25, 30 sandwiches, and we thought that was great back then. So we started there. Like I said, we had a network of people, and my family's been farming, all these years, and I have a network from Niagara County. Like we're, part of the agricultural community. I was on Farm Bureau board. My dad was on farm, 3 generations back were on Farm Bureau. So we had a network of people and relationships, which was key. And through the farmers market, and David was big into the slow food movement. That was, sort of the first starts of all that back then. So we had a network of people, and without that, it would have been hard. And the network, but also like legitimate relationships that have been established, and, trust and respect back and forth for years with people. So we, that was huge from the get-go. Otherwise, I think it would have been hard to start cold turkey of not having that. It could probably be done, but that was one benefit of who we were in our lives that we had prior to all coming together to form this. So we quickly kind of outgrew the space. Well, back then also, when you talk about what evolved, prepared foods is kind of another key word that was sort of coming about back then. And that was the whole, like the grab and go. People still want healthy, they still want local, but boy, time to cook and things like that. So prepared foods was starting to evolve, and we had a small little kitchen upstairs, and a chef would come in part-time. And I went from one part-time chef up there, and now we have 4, almost full-time, and where that component expanded. So we quickly grew out of that space, and then the space on Main Street in Snyder on the corner there where we are came up for lease. It had a fire at Christmas time, before we were there, obviously, but they were renovating it, and a for sale or for lease sign went up, and David and his wife lived in Snyder a couple blocks away, and he had mentioned, what about moving there? And I thought, oh gosh, that's a big move. That's a lot, the risk and things like that. But again, I walked into the space, and you walked in, it's on the corner, it has a corner door, for gosh sakes, 45-degree angle. Like you couldn't get any more bigger of a feel than corner store on Main Street selling local agricultural food. So I fell in love with the space, and then, that was it. But sadly, while we were in process of renovating and getting ready to move there, and the equipment and the build out, which again, ignorance is bliss. I knew nothing. And if I did, I wouldn't have done it, because I had no idea of a hood and and 3-phase and, so many things I had no idea about. Learned quickly, resourceful, but I think if I had known more, I wouldn't have done it. but I didn't realize he was very ill, and I did realize, but it progressed and he passed away.
That's terrible.
Right before we were getting ready to move in. And again, it was another trip I took that summer before we moved in September, and I knew like things were changing for him and he was getting sicker. Went on a trip with my sister, overseas, beautiful, time. And I remember saying to myself, when I get off that plane and land back in Buffalo, I have to have my decision of whether I'm going to go forward with this or not by myself.
Yeah.
Because that was another scary. I mean, David was, and his wife, both so knowledgeable on the food part of it that I wasn't. On the prepared food and the bakery and all that, and financially was going to be on my own. So I kind of told myself that when I landed, I have to tell myself yes or no, and obviously I landed and said yes. So, but that was a very hard, sad transition, and we still use recipes from him, tried and true recipes. Probably the cookie recipes are his. So that was another big decision, but again, jumped in.
Yeah, that's got to be really, really, really tough. Like, talk about mixed emotions where you're so sad about what he's going through and then ultimately what happens, but then simultaneously you have to make a decision about the business going forward. What do you think? Was it again just like a, hey, you know what, I'm just going to do this because like there's no other option, I'm not going to fail, or was there a little bit more to it with everything that was going on?
Well, good question, because I could have easily gone back to physical therapy and just, sold off things and whatever. When, still helped out at the farm for our apple season. I still could have fit that in, helped out there and just gone back to physical therapy. But I think we had laid so much of the groundwork of the product line and what was important to us and the impact, we were trying to make. And I had the freedoms because it was our own business. I wasn't on a set schedule. It was helping out the family farm, just by, the carryover to our You Pick business. And I was selling a lot of our apples and products and cider and things like that there. And I think I got to the point that, okay, I think I'm done with physical therapy. Or I even remember thinking financially, like, all right, I could even do home care and see some patients on the side or do something, if I needed to. But I just decided I've gotten this far. I'm just going to keep going with it.
It's like burn all the boats.
Yep.
I love it.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Jump back in.
That's awesome. So as we sit here now, can you talk about the interplay between the farm and Farmers and Artisans? Because I think I just want to set the stage a little bit. For most people, and you got a lot of great, smart people that come in that work for you and your customers, but it's a lot of people. It's like it's become like this part of their routine, part of their week or their weekend, but they don't see everything behind the scenes.
Right.
They see, hey, I come on this day and I get this, and I come on this day and I get this, and so I'd like to like kind of explore that, but kind of start with like the connection or the interplay between Blackman Farms and Farmers and Artisans.
Well, I think growing up on a farm gives you different perspective of things. Like, you have to roll with it. I mean, something was always, there's a farm, actually, I'm going to get product from them. It's called, It's Always Something. And that's the name of his
perfect.
farm, and it's like a perfect name for the farm.
Yeah.
But it is, like, you just wake up and, I can remember we'd want to go off somewhere for a little day trip as a family growing up, and then a cow was sick, or we couldn't do this because it was going to rain tomorrow, so Dad had to get the hay baled, because it was going to be rained on the next day, or hailstorms. Weather is like more and more dealing with all that. So it makes you, more adaptable, more resourceful, more appreciative. And I think we do try to convey that to our customers. I try to have things all the time that they want, but it's just, that's not the real deal of how it is out there.
Yeah.
And not to use it as an excuse, but you can't help it. Like, if it's slow this year, like strawberries might be late because of our wet late spring, like it is what it is. We're dealing with Mother Nature. I think that's an important connection that we want people to make, is like the realities of it, let alone the work. They see farmers delivering all the time. And I think we've shown the appreciation towards the work of any hands-on producer, whether it's the farmer or the, Bread Hive and their breads and Butter Block and all their croissants, and all of our local small-scale producers that are just trying to make it, day to day. So I think we have adaptability. We might not have everything for your recipe, but maybe you got to adapt to this or make that tomorrow night, do this tonight. Like it's not a perfect world, and we somewhat represent that,
That makes a lot of sense. Let me ask you this. You have a lot of people, I'm sure, who, and just, you talk to certain people like, I'm really, say I'm insistent on or committed to, say, like buying local. Like It's got to be whether you want to, whether it's farm to table or like, hey, I need to make sure that these eggs are sourced locally and they're this or that or whatever. How loyal are people to that, say, when you have like price fluctuations in the market? Like, is it, hey, like, most people, if they say they're going to do that, like, hey, if you don't have it, I'm not using it, and I'll pivot, or are they secretly driving someplace else to get it?
Well, it's funny because I think, COVID, for example.
I want to talk to you about that.
Yeah, well, we could do. We could do a separate thing on COVID, but all right, or the bird flu last year. That everyone, there was such a shortage of eggs. So we did okay on it, and our prices only went up a little bit because I'm so direct to the farms. Like literally, they're delivered directly from the farm, or they come. Our eggs come. Majority come from the Finger Lakes, so they deliver to a distributor who brings them to us.
Sure.
Finger Lakes Family Farms. So we weren't as impacted. For one thing, is there was some bird flu in our state, but not as much as the big farms across the country. Yeah. So we were able to sort of, because we're so local like that, we're able to minimize some of those risks. But it's hard, it's a lot of work. But we're so direct, and just related to that with COVID, we weren't relying on distributors bringing things in. It was the farmers, and so eggs and milk still come out of animals. So they were happy to move them and get them to us, and we it kind of helped us out. We sold a lot of it during that. I think the buy local is huge, and has been, and that was the premise of starting all of this. I think also now people are, it's trending, it's local for sure, but it's also, people just want simple, minimally processed, clean, some of those keywords that we offer. Mm-hmm. And so that just sort of goes hand in hand with local, but people are very conscious of what they're eating and what they're feeding their kids, and it's wonderful. Like I'm always happy when, moms will come in and say like, my kid loves your maple syrup. Like they finally were able to get rid of the, store-bought, maple flavored, whatever the brand is now, in their pantry, and use real maple syrup. Or the kids, I joke, my little desk area is over by the eggs, and I count the countless number of kids that have learned to count to 12 because they're filling the eggs, cool. in their cartons. It's all those simple little things. And one mom, she came in last week, and she said her 5-year-old, it was his birthday, and she asked him what he wanted for his birthday, and he said, I want one of the meat sticks from Farmers and Artisans.
That's awesome.
I mean, how do you not to know that we're having an impact on the kids coming by from school and stopping in and getting a snack? Like where can you do that anymore? Where can your kids ride their bikes somewhere and just pop in and know? Like I've even had moms call me and say, this is the first jaunt, of so-and-so riding their bike. They're gonna come and get a few things. Would you just text me when they get there?
Oh, that's
I'm
awesome.
like, sure, So where else can you be that and help this, younger generation appreciate, know where their food comes? So many, like a lot of them then come up to the farm, to you pick and make the correlation of me. It was funny when we first opened, or early on when we opened, and I was back at the farm working during the Ep56 season, and I saw one of my customers there, and she's like, "Wait a second, you work here too?" And I said, "Well, this is actually where I live, and this is my family's farm." Like they didn't make the connection early on, but it's good, and they'll say like, "Oh, she's the one that sold you the cider slushy," and all those connections are so important for the young kiddos.
Yeah, that's amazing. Can you talk more about, because like, you beat me to the punch. I was thinking, I think, there's a lot more information for sure now about, the importance, like for health reasons of organic or like not processed, like obviously like the more direct line to the actual source, the better, all this kind of stuff that we talk about. And I think that information's out there a lot more. But can you also talk about, the positive impact that, say, buying local has on, local farmers, local producers? Can you talk about that? I mean, because you grew up in that, and like
Right.
you can see, I mean, I don't think people, including myself, actually understand how difficult it is. And you've started to hint at that, whether you're talking about, farmers or producers who are just trying to get by every day.
Well, and I think what's nice about like the size of our farm, like I have a couple of farmers who they sell either at their own farm, maybe they sell to some other farm stands. Maybe they're not big enough to like get into Wegmans or, sell to Desiderios or something like that. But a lot of times I'll get a call from them and they'll say like, I have, 4 bushels of so-and-so left over. Would you want them? And I'm like, sure. So I'm kind of a nice sized store that can help out farms, including even my dad will be like, why don't you take these to the store? They'll sell there, and, we didn't, they didn't sell this weekend at the farm. Let's, take a Monday and let's sell them. Or, so I am a size of a store that can help out in those ways. Some of the smaller farms that don't have the big commitments, that we can help and absorb. And that happened during COVID too, because a lot of them, one of the farms that supplies a lot of restaurants with meats, and that shut down.
Oh yeah.
And eggs. And so quickly we worked out, all right, let's do a meat box, because everybody was cooking at home and working and educating from home. So we quickly came up with a meat box concept from their farm, and let's sell it that way. So and first of all, it's only me making, I have a great staff that helps me make decisions, and I count on them a lot for input, and they're kind of my, litmus test of, when I come in and they're like, I say, oh, I have an idea. And they're just like, oh no, now what? But they helped me pivot and come up with these ideas. And we helped a lot of people out during COVID because I could quickly absorb, a lot of those things. And you can't have waste. Like everybody's, you hate to waste food. And in that case, what are they going to do with all this meat that was, frozen, but still ready to be processed? They're processing, cows were still being processed during COVID. So eggs were still coming out of chickens every day. Like that all didn't stop. A lot of things did, but those things didn't. So we were able to just like pivot and just keep it going. And then also during COVID, my kitchen staff, my chefs, did an amazing job at creating more prepared foods and family entrees, and like overnight created this whole line of those foods to use at home and cook at home. And then again, we could absorb like, all right, I got a couple extra bushels of, squash coming in from so-and-so. All right, let's make butternut squash soup. Or so I kind of, back to the first question, I'm sorry, but I'm small enough and adaptable enough, and we're resourceful enough that we can kind of help absorb some of these things from these farms and help them out in that way.
That's amazing. And you only have so much shelf space.
Right? I do. Right.
I got to imagine, there's farms, producers that are coming to you all the time trying to get their products in your store. How do you handle that? Like, how do you make decisions?
Good
do you have
question.
like a set of rules where you're like, if I'm even going to consider it, it has to check all these boxes. I have to go out and see their farm. Like, I'm just kind of curious how this works.
Yes, good question. So I, because I have low shelf space, like, and I don't want to dilute, like I do really well with one vendor selling their thing. Like, I don't want to dilute it too much that it limits the sales that I already have with them and a relationship established.
Yep.
So I am conscious of those things. Sometimes, and I've had to say no to other people coming in, and just because of that reason, like, you know what, I have this vendor, we only have this much space, I'm committed to them, but then I'll say maybe I can incorporate that into a produce box or a gift box, or, there might be other ways to kind of help promote them or utilize their products, or maybe we'll use something in the kitchen or whatever. I wish I had more space. I do. I would never move, but because there is more and more to offer coming out. So, or like I said, I just spoke with another farmer, and they have a whole line of a lot of pork. And I said, well, maybe if you have a lot, let's do a box of pork for the summer sale, and then try to help you move it that way. Maybe I can't have all of it. I've maybe 1 or 2 items I'm going to have in my freezer, but maybe if you have so much of something, let's figure out a one-time box this summer. Everybody's going to be grilling and barbecuing, and do it that way. So it's fun.
Yeah.
It's problem solving on the fly and being creative, and a lot of times it works. I've such a loyal, as you know, just a very loyal, loyal customer base that they trust, what we promote and advertise, they trust, and we'll make it right. And we've been able to sell a lot of things that way.
If for the things that do make it, so say, I'm just making this up, you have eggs from a farmer,
right,
and all of a sudden the farmer says, guess what? I'm closing the farm down, and now you have to find more eggs. Is there like a test that's essentially, like, whether it's in your head or not, someone's got to go through? Like, you have to be like, hey, I need to represent to, my customers that it's of this quality, of this standard, whatever. Like, do you have stuff like that, or you're not forced to make decisions like that a lot just because you have such loyal like producers?
I'm not, but then a lot of times it's such, like, farmers help each other out. And so if they're low, they recommend somebody. Yeah. So I trust their judgment on it too. And that happened a little bit during the bird flu, where there were some shortages. So I haven't had to really do that too much. And like I said, I'll go to the farms will give me, or the producer will say, like, we're not able to do this, but I would suggest so-and-so. And we have enough networks of people out there that I can kind of call or know people and just say, like, where do you sell this and this, or where do you get this and this? So
is it fair to say that there is, in the agriculture industry, a lot of, like, this is in probably every industry, but it sounds like it's really built on trust. Like, like it sounds like there's a lot of, like, deep relationships that you have with people where you're like, okay, if you tell me you don't have this, but this person has it, I trust you that that's going to be to the standards that we expect.
Well, I'm saying this sitting across from a lawyer, but a lot of agreements are made.
Oh yeah,
handshake, back of the pickup truck.
I think that's
in the
great.
Driveway, at the kitchen table. It's a lot is made that way, good and bad, because sometimes that's not the right way to do it. It needs a more formal approach, but a lot is done that way. Of even texting and farmers that know me, and
I'm not a contract lawyer, and my contract lawyer friends would be like, don't tell her this, but I honestly, like, I love that. Right. I mean, I'll say this, like, someone's word is a lot more powerful than whatever's written on a contract or piece of paper, because we see it all day, every day, where people just, like, totally disregard the contracts. Like, there's something more about making a representation of somebody, knowing somebody face to face, like all that kind of stuff. I think it ends up being stronger. Now, I'm not telling anybody listening not to have contracts. I'm just saying,
there are many things that we've done that probably should have been more formalized. I say that, of course, but I think with farmers, we have rental agreements and things like that. Probably some handwritten and things like that. But it's different. These farms, it's your family, it's generations of families, it's your land, it's your reputation. Like, farmers, you're not really going to jeopardize that, and you're not going to last if you do. It's embedded in these people. So and farmers, they get along, they help out each other.
That's awesome.
It's a good group of people.
So let me ask you this. What, I think sometimes when you hear like, hey, okay, everything in here is, I don't know if this is totally true, but we'll just say it's like almost everything in here is local, right?
Right.
I got to imagine, because sometimes it could sound like, oh, that must be easy. You just get everything locally. That sounds like it's probably a lot harder than if you were like, we'll just take it from wherever we can get it. Can you talk about how difficult it is to actually remain, local, and I guess to maintain those standards that you've set for yourself?
Right. Yeah, it's taken time, for sure. And like I said, there's more and more coming out, so it has been easier. But, we have, what do we have? We have Vermont, caramels from Vermont. Like we've crossed.
Sure.
I think I have New Jersey asparagus coming in from a small farm through the Finger Lakes because in New York's not ready yet because it's been so cold.
That makes sense. Yeah.
I have to, I'm probably 95% Western New York across New York State. But I think it surprises people, how big agriculture is in our state. Even relatives and friends that live across the country and, they think New York is New York City.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
I'm like, oh, no. A lot is grown in this state. And our Western New York region is amazing, for the diversity that we can produce. So, of course, sometimes I look at things and I'll say like, oh my gosh, I want to sell that. And then I'll look and I'll be like, Michigan, So, but some things, yes, I have had to cross the state line to get occasionally, but it's still with the premise of, it's still supporting agriculture. It's still supporting a tighter stream of not middlemen. It's still supporting smaller family farms. It still kind of meets those criteria. It's just, it's on the other side of the border and we don't have it, and that's really good. And,
Yeah. That makes sense.
I don't want to shoot myself in the foot on some things, or if that's something that really is great and pairs with something else that is here. Like, I don't want to, I'm strict about it, but so strict that you shoot yourself in the foot and it jeopardizes even a bigger picture.
That makes sense. What is something maybe about agriculture in Western New York that you wish, say like Western New York is new, but you feel like probably most people don't? And it could be like, I'll give you an example. I'm just making it up. Did you know that we're the number one producer for blank? Or I'm curious. I feel like, again, a lot of people, it's getting better, but I think a lot of us, we take for granted. Like, the food that we're buying, even if it's from you, like, okay, we trust Julie, it's local, it's high quality, but like there's a lot going on behind the scenes. Like, to your point, I've had friends visit me from New York City, and they come in, they're like, whoa. And they're like, they're not from New York State. They're like, there's a lot of farmland in New York State. I'm like, yeah, like most of it's farmland. What would you say? What are some things that you wish people knew?
Well, one thing that I feel like we're lacking in our area and across the state is a lot of the processing. So meat processing is like, it is hard to get meat to be processed. Like, kind of the joke is you schedule the processing date of a calf that was born on the day that was born because it takes so long to get in. Wow. So all of that next level, and we have such short windows of time to grow things, on the fruit, on produce side of it. I wish we had some place that does IQF, or individually quick freezing produce, blueberries, vegetables, but the costs of doing all that are so high. That's the problem, and the regulations. Because I have this idea, like, what if, ice cream trucks in the summertime, they're obsolete in the wintertime, but they could go around to neighborhoods and have frozen foods in them, and people could come out and grab some of these frozen, packs of blueberries and beans and corn and all this stuff that could be IQF or quick frozen and packaged that only extends our season even longer. So those are just sort of my like dreamy, what if things that could help feed populations that need help, and especially off season. There's so many more urban markets in the cities now, which is wonderful, but it's such a limited window of time that we can be out there doing that. And, some of those lack of processing and cost, costs inhibit being able to do that. So those are some of my dreamy agricultural things.
You know, that if they're, I mean, I can guarantee you this. If you had a Farmers and Artisans like ice cream truck that run around ringing bells in Snyder, people will go nuts. You would have, instead of kids chasing ice cream, you'd have adults running down the street trying to get food. I mean, it would, for sure.
Well, I just saw, it was a post that came through, and I was talking to a customer, but I think it was in Denmark, and it was an old Metro bus that was converted into a mini store, and it actually went around to elderly, kind of more remote populations where they could go inside it, and it was handicap accessible, go inside and shop, and it was, warm. They could get out of the weather, and it would be like Farmers and Artisans, like in a bus.
Oh, wow. That's really cool.
I know.
That's amazing. What do you think, or not what do you think, what's the hardest part about running the business today? Like, what are the things you're like, oh man, like, ooh, like this is tough, but it's just part of the business. Because everybody, I don't care what kind of business you have, like, I think especially if you're not a business owner, you look at a business from the outside, like, oh, they got it all figured out, or this seems to run so smoothly and there's no issues here. What do you think is like the hardest part?
HR stuff is tough.
Yeah.
I think that's a common thread.
Anybody who's owned a business for longer than a year says that. Yeah.
HR stuff is tough, and all the requirements for it. We don't have HR departments. We don't have like somebody says, who does your payroll? Me. Who does all your onboarding? Me. Who does all your requirements and this and that? Me. Usually at night I'm doing that because I can't. There's no time during the day to do those things. Yeah. So HR stuff is hard. We have a good workforce. We don't have too much turnover, which is good. Have good people, but it's still hard. And people leave for having babies and, all sorts of reasons that are off to college, moving, things like that. But I think that's a common thread. Any small business, any of the other vendors who come in the store and other business owners, that's probably what we kapitz about the most. Yeah. That's a hard part of it with us, or with, my business model. Of course, weather. Yeah. It's so impactful. I mean, the spring already is slow and limiting. We had frost. Blossoms were out on fruit. We had frost, late frost. Like, people don't understand all of that. If it was cold, our apples were in full blossom Mother's Day weekend, but it was freezing cold and windy, so the bees don't like to pollinate. So those are all factors. Like, apples just don't show up on the trees. They trim through the winter time. All apple or all fruit trees are trimmed during the dead of winter by hand, for the most part, by workers in the freezing cold, because that's when they're dormant. So it's a year-round process.
So it sounds like because of course you're having to roll the punches or react to what's happening in the environment. You got to really be on your toes, paying attention. Sounds tiring.
It's exhausting.
Yeah.
I think, again, I'm just wired differently because I, grew up with it, and especially being a dairy and fruit farm, talk about, risks and limitations and things like that growing up. It's a lot of work. I mean, it's 6, we're closed on Sundays, but I still do tons of book work and things like that on that day, or, do things at the farm or try to mow my lawn or something like that. But, as I mean, even here and, owning your own business, it's a lot. It's all on you.
It's nonstop.
Yeah. You try to be healthy about it and take breaks and, limit your time, but you're constantly thinking about it. But I sleep well.
That's good.
I sleep
well.
Important. I eat well. I sleep well.
I always joke. I'm like, man, if you looked around society and you just saw almost like a video game, and there was something lit up above a person and it signified that they were a business owner. I could guarantee you, in the back of it, I know what they're thinking about, and it's it's always rolling. Even when you're talking to somebody who owns a business, deep in the back of the head is oh, how would I do this? I got to make sure I do this tomorrow. Blah blah blah, that kind of stuff.
Well, and I try to be aware of this, at the store, and on Saturdays it's business, and try to have, it's a great community day. Yeah. Try to have conversations with people. But I swear to God, I'm seeing out the back of my head, okay, we got to get that restocked. All right, those baguettes have to get out,
Yep.
And so I try to have these conversations with people and pay attention, but I'm constantly like looking like, is that being taken care of? Are they waiting in line? Do they need to order? So it's a lot of juggling, but.
Yeah. And how do you balance that? Because that's the classic business owner, whether you want to talk about like delegation or trust, like, and then I'm sure you've done it. Like I have many, many times. It's like a work in progress where you're like, okay, like I know I can trust this person. Okay, I'm pretty sure they know. Okay, wait a minute. Let me just ask and make sure that they remember. And then they're like, yeah, I got it. Like, sorry, it's more of a me problem.
Yeah. Like you good? You good? You're okay with that? Oh yeah, that's totally me.
Yeah.
And then sometimes I was like, see, I was right. Like, I don't say that to her, but in my mind, I'm like, oh, good thing I asked.
Yeah.
Oh, that front door didn't get like
I make a joke about
things.
it. Yeah.
I know you have to.
Yeah.
But it is, it's a lot to juggle and be part of the community and have families and own a house and but you fit it all in. And I think it's super frustrating at times, of course, but you have to eventually know that in the bigger picture you're doing the right thing for yourself and for everyone.
For sure. So 6 generations on the farm. Is there a 7th generation preparing to take it over?
Well, I unfortunately didn't contribute to the 7th generation, but I have nieces and nephews who are college, post-college, going to college. None of them live locally, but they love it. They love the farm, and who knows where they all have their career paths now. But like I did. You never say never. Yeah. I went off into a career for almost 20 years and came back. And, who knows where other professions will be? Who knows how our climate is? I joke, everybody's going to be back here because we have land to grow food on and we have tons of fresh water and we have a climate that's, annoying but manageable.
Yeah.
And so, who knows? But as I say, I plant the seed with all the kids.
That's smart.
Yeah.
Nieces and nephews, if you're listening,
yeah.
AI will not replace farmers.
No.
So you may want to think hard about that.
Angela plants the seeds many times.
That's awesome. What do you, when you look to the future of either the farm or the store, what does that look like for you? And to give a little bit more context, I think it's really awesome that you've built this place that you're really dedicated to quality, and it seems that you don't bend, right? It's always the same super high level of service, of product, everything, every single time. A lot of people in your shoes would already have, and I'm not saying this would have been a good thing, like expanded, gotten a bigger store, opened up other locations. I'm curious about your plan for the future. Just leave it there.
Well, I get requests a lot, for another store. Could you come down to the South Towns?
Yeah.
Would you ever consider we need you to a store like this in whatever town they live in? And I, believe me, not dreamer, but I like to think ahead and move forward, and it'd be fun to have another store in another location. But I also I couldn't handle it, and staffing would be tough. And I swear to God, every Monday I come in, one of my coolers is down, and it's just always something. I don't think I could handle it and maintain the quality and relationships and what I'm able to do. So I say that now, but again, if just thinking ahead, I try to just think ahead 5 years at a time, because beyond that, who knows? I think COVID taught us that.
Yeah.
You have to have, you have to be striving towards something or working towards something, and we all are aging and things like that. But to go further than that, but who knows? I think that this style of shopping, this style of this model, I should say, of how you obtain your food, I think the biggest thing that Farmers and Artisans offers, that I do and my staff, it's a connection. I think that's the key word. To just summarize it all, it's a connection. It's a connection to our farmers. It's a connection to each other. you know, it's a connection to the land. It's a connection to your dinner table, your own families, your holidays. Like, people get their entire holiday meals from us. And so we offer, that's probably the biggest thing that we offer in many different shapes and forms. And I think that that feeling and that concept is going to be more prevalent and needed more and wanted more as time goes on, with AI, with everything digital, with no personality at bigger box stores and things like that.
Yep.
And so who knows?
No, I think you're right.
Where that's going to lead over time. And so we'll kind of let some of that play itself out.
I know you're right.
Let me pause for 1
Yep.
second. I'm so sorry. This ran out of memory.
It's all right.
So I'm going to have to switch a card real quick.
We're almost done anyways.
I have all the audio, but the video.
It's all good. It happens sometimes.
Oh,
It's funny because I was just reading something, how there's a huge snapback in analog phone purchases where young kids
Yes.
are buying the flip phones and stuff now. They don't want the iPhones anymore, which is pretty cool. Mm-hmm. It's wild. But it makes sense. Do you know, I don't know if you ever met Nicole's brother, Cameron.
oh yeah.
Yeah, right. You know
Love 'em
Cameron.
all.
I love
Yeah,
Cameron.
love 'em all.
He desperately wants a flip phone.
Yeah.
Desperately. But his soon to be fiance won't let him
I know,
have
it's
one.
so funny.
She's like, I'm never gonna be able to get a hold of you.
Well, I think that, and I say this about a lot of things, like, you have to stimulate all five senses.
Yeah.
And once you start minimizing one of them, you're wonky. That's,
Yeah.
and so you have to, that's why they want the tactile stuff now.
Yeah.
So all that's going to come back. Or you walk into our store and you smell it and you see it and you touch it. You're going to taste it eventually.
Yeah.
And what's the other one? Hear it. And then hearing, it's just being part of a community and hearing workers and hearing the bakery and hearing buzzers. And so I feel like our little store is like promotes all those five senses, and you have to, the experiences that do that are going to be the ones that people need and want in the future.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, we, for those listening, we ran out of memory on the video, so if we cut out, that's why. But we were just talking about, because we were talking about the store and, how important it is, and like how it's snapping back, where people, like, they want to be present. They want to know where things came from. They want the smells, the sights. They want to talk to people. It's almost like we got away from that a little bit. Maybe COVID almost like pushed us closer to that, because people realize how important human connection is, or just connection to land, or like you were talking a lot about connection. And then we were talking about flip phones and how like the young kids are all about them again. That all makes a lot of sense. And I think that's how it should be. I think slowly you're seeing more and more, especially the younger generation, appreciate, things like the trades, building things with their hands, more traditional, maybe, professions that maybe kids got away for a while because they were pushed in a different direction, or felt like, I'm not supposed to do that. I mean, obviously, I think that higher education is changing big time, as it should. So it's cool. I appreciate that. As I get older too, I'm like, man, I just really appreciate like human connection, like real things, like less of like the digital age.
And real food, and preserving, and going back to having, I hear young people coming in, they're having dinner parties, and it's wonderful. All those things are great. Kind of how we grew up, having those experiences. And I think it is circling back. And, we're happy to be part of the food component for that.
Somebody gave me, one of my buddies runs like the most prominent online defamation law firm in the country. And I helped him out with something really minor. And he sent me this cool, like, kind of gift bag. And one of the things in there, and I can't remember the name of this thing, Brett, you might know it, whatever, but it's the bag, essentially, it's a bag you put your phone in.
Okay.
And you zipper it, and it does not get any cell service, like nothing. Like it's not even like you just can't use it. nothing goes into it.
Yeah, they use them at comedy shows and stuff
Oh,
like that.
But it's the
Right.
level up from that,
oh,
where
yes.
it's like
They-
it doesn't work.
They protect from like an EMP pulse and everything.
Yeah,
but it
right.
keeps it
Okay.
from working.
And I'm like, what would people do if you invited them over for like a night of like a dinner party, a bourbon, and a
Yeah.
cigar, whatever your thing is? You're like, hey, you got to put your phone in this
Yeah.
bag first.
You
Yeah.
may freak them out.
Yeah.
Maybe start with just like leave it in the basket
We'll start
at the
there.
door.
And then we'll,
Start
good
start
idea.
with that.
Yeah, good
Like,
idea.
yeah.
Good idea. All right, so we're coming to an end here. I just have 2 questions left for you.
Okay.
One's a little more lighthearted, and it's, you know who Spencer Brown is of the Buffalo Bills?
Yes.
So we had him on, and maybe he's coming on again soon. We'll see. But he grew up on a farm.
Okay.
And I asked him a question that I want to ask you is, what's one thing you would never want to do on a farm again? So it could be that's the hardest thing, it's the grossest thing, whatever. What's one thing you're like, I could do without ever doing that again?
My least favorite job was tying grapes.
Okay, talk about
And
that.
so in the springtime, the grape vineyard, we had a Concord grape vineyard, and that would get trimmed in the wintertime. So all the vines that grew throughout the year would get trimmed. And then you would have to go through, and it was during spring break. So my friends were going to Florida and Myrtle Beach and this and that. And my cousins were always home having to tie grapes. And it was sometimes warm, sometimes like this year would have been brutal and cold and windy. But you have to tie each of the vines to the wires, top and bottom wires. And there's different techniques, rows and rows and rows of grapes. And that would be my least favorite. I would be happy to never do that again.
Well, now I have to ask a question because I love Concord grapes. It's like a very limited window
Right.
every year. What is the actual proper way to eat them?
Jelly.
Okay.
No, I don't.
'Cause-
Yeah, you can. I mean, I eat them and I just swallow the seeds.
Okay.
I do skin and seeds
Okay.
and just eat them all.
Okay.
There's kind of a seedless Concord out there now.
Oh.
I think it's called Mars, where you get that flavor of it, but
Okay.
there's no seeds in it.
Okay, fair
I
enough.
try to get those in from another farm.
Okay.
But otherwise, Concord grapes, yeah, it's a tough table grape because you do.
Yeah.
But some people, skin them and then, get rid of the seeds, but I just eat the whole thing.
That's what I've migrated.
And then,
I progressed to
of
that
course,
too.
grape
Yeah.
juice, and I
Yeah.
do a Concord grape pie filling. And growing up, we always had grape jelly. Was our peanut butter and grape jelly was our go-to all the time. So,
Okay. Great answer.
yep.
All right. Last question, I promise.
Okay.
What's one piece of advice you would give to somebody who's thinking about starting their own business?
Oh, that's a good one. Sometimes, yeah, I've said this. I've said to somebody one time, if somebody asks me that question, I'm just going to say, don't do it.
You're not allowed to say that.
I'm not allowed to say that. That's like the frustrating day. It's like
Yeah.
when my cheese cooler went down, and then I'm like,
Well,
don't
some
do
people
it,
should
but
be told not to do it. I will say that.
Some people should be told not to do it. What's the advice I would give somebody? I think one thing that I did not anticipate, so kind of just business-wise and numbers-wise, I underestimated a lot on the expense side of things. Like the fees, the this, the that, like the percentage, people pay with credit cards, the percentage that you lose, like the fee for every little step you take, the fee for this, liquor license, this and this. I totally underestimated the expense side of things. Yeah, the income side of it's fun. Like, oh, I'm going to make this much on eggs and this much on this and that. But the expense side of things, I mean, anybody. I mean,
Yeah.
you probably look at your electric bill or whatever.
Yeah, it's
you
crazy.
Yeah, it's insane. I think you can't, there were probably many times along the way that I should have cut my losses and gotten out. But I was in a situation, I wasn't supporting a family. I could make that decision. I have a different situation that I could just make that on my own. But like I said, there were many times I should have, and friends and family said, why don't you just cut your losses and be done? And I was like, because I can't. To know, but there also is a right time to do that. And if you give it your all, and that's the right decision for you and financially and for your family and for your health and for your family's help, it's okay.
Yep.
It's okay.
This is awesome. Thank you so much for doing it.
Thank you.
Appreciate
you made it so easy. Yes.
Hey, and look, so I think a lot of people who are listening probably already know where to find you, but where can people find you both physically and like maybe on social media?
So Farmers and Artisans, we're on Main Street in Snyder, right near the Snyder Fire, between Harlem and the 290 ramp. We're open 6 days a week. So it's farmersandartisans.com, and then Farmers and Artisans on Facebook and Instagram.
And it sounds like they can come up to Blackman Farm too.
So we have apple picking during our fall season.
Okay, awesome.
And so, yeah, we kind of have small windows of time for that. So all that information is later on.
All right. Thanks, Julie. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, everybody, that's a wrap on this episode of Angles. I appreciate you listening in as always. And look, I just have one small favor to ask of you. If you got value out of this episode, please go on, whether you follow us on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever, like, subscribe, leave us a review, share this with your friends. Doing this makes the podcast more visible, ensures we can keep running this, we can keep getting great guests to tell these great stories. So again, if you've gotten any benefit out of this, share with a friend, your family member, whoever. We really appreciate it. Thanks as always for listening. We'll see you on the next one.